Your prayer life is almost non-existent. You're struggling with the same sins over and over again, and your spiritual growth is completely stagnant. And to top it off, you cannot find a good spiritual director anywhere. Is there anything that you can practically do to help yourself advance in the spiritual life? Most of us, I think, we all drive in rush hour traffic. That's something that's very common to us. And I think kind of look at our drive to work in the morning as evidence of what we might be spiritually deficient in. So to begin with, every morning when you leave and you're driving in rush hour traffic, do you find yourself habitually running behind? Are you usually late? I don't mean occasionally you're late, but I mean almost every time you're running behind and you're having to rush. Because if that's the case, you may be deficient in the virtue of prudence. Now, if you are deficient in that particular virtue, you may see it in other places in your life also, where maybe you have a lot of anxiety and you worry about things, or maybe you find yourself neglecting certain responsibilities that you have. If you are deficient in that virtue, I'd recommend that you create a structure of morning and evening prayer. Hopefully you already have that, but chances are you're probably late to your morning prayer time. But have this structure and learn to be faithful to that structure where you pray 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening. And you might have to restructure things in your life so that you're not late to that prayer time. And once you develop that faithfulness to the 20-minute prayer time and the 20-minute evening prayer time, that will develop this virtue of prudence over time. It's not going to happen overnight. You'll be late the first day, and you'll be late the second day too. But over time, you'll develop this virtue, and you'll learn to be devoted to it. You'll learn, I've got to go to bed at 8:33 on the dot, or else I'll miss my prayer time. And once you create that structure and that discipline and that devotion, that will help over time to develop that virtue. By doing that, you'll grow in that particular virtue, and 6 months from now, you can make a valid judgment by looking at your morning drive and seeing, okay, I'm not regularly running behind anymore. Also, I'd recommend that you start drinking coffee. Now, second, on your drive to work, do you find yourself speeding a lot and then justifying that it's okay to speed at this particular place because the speed limit's too low, or whatever the case may be? Or do you find yourself using your cell phone and justifying that, or cutting somebody off? Just breaking traffic laws that seem small, but because they're small, they're insignificant, and so you're able to justify it. You're able to make an excuse. If you do that a lot, that may indicate that you have a deficiency in the virtue of justice. If you do have a deficiency in that virtue, in other places of your life, you may see that you're lying, or you may also see that you're selfish. Like, for example, when your family's gathered around the table and you take the last cookie and you justify it, you think to yourself, oh, I deserve the last cookie. If you are struggling with this virtue, if you have a deficiency in justice, some ways to grow in justice, I think, would be to increase your almsgiving, and also try to shift the way you're thinking. Sometimes it's very easy to ignore some law that seems insignificant when you think, oh, it's just a little town, they made a little traffic law, it's not important. But if you start to see yourself as God's servant and all of the authority that he's put over you as part of his hierarchy, and that you're really being faithful to him, that could really change your perspective. Then it's not an issue of whether the law was just or not. You are being just by being a servant to God. Of course, I truly mean just laws. I don't mean unjust laws. Next, on your drive to work, when somebody cuts you off, how do you respond? Do you cuss at them? Do you give them the finger? The way you respond may indicate that you have a deficiency in the virtue of temperance. Now, if you have this deficiency, you may see it in other places of your life, like you may overindulge in food, and you may struggle with lust, and we're going to talk about that in the next video. If you have this deficiency in temperance, you can grow in temperance by doing some very small things. For example, you could make the decision, you can make the resolution that from now on, in every situation, every circumstance, you will always let somebody get in front of you, even if that causes you to have to drive slower. It may seem like a very small, inconsequential thing, but virtue grows in these little small exercises, these small baby steps. And think about it. If you let somebody, you've got an hour drive to work, you let somebody get in front of you every time, every 10 minutes, by the time you get to work, you would have practiced that virtue 6 times on the way home. And, do the math on that. That's going to be over 50 times a week, 60 times a week. Lastly, on your drive to work, are you the guy that's tailgating? Are you the guy that's cutting everybody off? Are you the guy that is driving recklessly? Now, you may be doing all of those things because you're deficient in all the other virtues, and now you're running late and you're cussing everybody out and running every stop sign. Or you may be deficient in the virtue of fortitude. If you're driving recklessly, you might not have considered the danger that you're putting yourself and other people in, and that would be the virtue of fortitude. If you're deficient in this virtue, in other places of your life, you might see yourself losing your patience with your family members or your coworkers. If you're deficient in this virtue, you can grow through fasting. The key here is to learn to die to yourself for the sake of others. Also, I would really recommend that you turn off the radio, the talk radio, the music, whatever it is. Turn it off, drive in silence, and pray the rosary. Now, in the next video, I'm going to speak about that one sin that every guy struggles with and we're all really embarrassed about, but we finally have to defeat it. But in this video, I'm going to share with you some of the best books on Catholic spirituality that might help you during a period of time when you don't have access to a spiritual director.